In a textbook example of denial and projection, Trump foes in and out of government wove a sinister yarn meant to take him down. Barack Obama keeps a close watch on his emotions. "I loved Spock," he wrote in February 2015 in a presidential statement eulogizing Leonard Nimoy. Growing up in Hawaii, the young man who would later be called No Drama Obama felt a special affinity for the Vulcan first officer of the USS Enterprise. Long before being nerdy was cool, there was Leonard Nimoy, the eulogy continued. Leonard was Spock, cool, logical, big-eared, and level-headed. It is the rare occasion when Obama lets his Spock mask slip, but November 2nd, 2016 was just such a moment. 6 days before the presidential election, when addressing the Congressional Black Caucus, he stressed that the Republican candidate, Donald Trump, threatened hard-won achievements of blacks, tolerance, justice, good schools, ending mass incarceration, even democracy itself. "There is one candidate who will advance those things," he said, his voice swelling with emotion. "And there's another candidate whose defining principle, the central theme of his candidacy, is opposition to all that we've done." The open display of emotion was new, but the theme of safeguarding his legacy was not. 2 months earlier, on July 5th, in Charlotte, North Carolina, Obama delivered his first stump speech for Hillary Clinton. He described his presidency as a leg in a relay race. Hillary Clinton had tried hard to pass affordable health care during Bill Clinton's administration, but she failed, and the relay baton fell to the ground. When Obama entered the White House, he picked it up. Now his leg of the race was coming to an end. "I'm ready to pass the baton," he said, "and I know that Hillary Clinton is going to take it." But he was less certain than he was letting on. Hillary Clinton was up in the polls, to be sure, but she was vulnerable. 3 weeks earlier, on June 15th, a cyber attacker fashioning himself as Guccifer 2.0 had published a cache of emails stolen from the Democratic National Committee. They proved, as supporters of Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders had long alleged, that the DNC had conspired with the Clinton campaign to undermine their candidate. Sanders was still withholding his endorsement of Clinton for president, even though her nomination as a Democratic candidate was now a foregone conclusion. At the very moment when Clinton had expected the Democratic Party to unite behind her, its deepest chasm seemed to be growing wider. In contrast to Clinton, Obama held some sway over the Sanders insurgents. He came to Charlotte to urge them to support Clinton against their shared enemy, the presumptive Republican nominee for president, Donald Trump. The insurgency was not the only Clinton vulnerability on Obama's mind. He had come to Charlotte in addition to deflect attention from the news conference that James Comey, the director of the FBI, had held that morning in Washington, D.C. The investigation into Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server was complete. Comey announced the FBI would recommend no criminal charges. That was the honey. But Comey administered it with a dose of vinegar. He dwelled on Clinton's mishandling of classified material in such detail that it sounded as if he was laying the foundation for an indictment. The decision not to charge Clinton, his statement signaled, was an exercise in prosecutorial restraint, not a true exoneration. From the perspective of the voters, Clinton's twin email travails. The hack of the DNC and the investigation into her server were two faces of a single problem. Call it Clinton Incorporation. Sanders and Trump were painting Clinton as Wall Street's darling, the establishment candidate. She was the greatest defender and prime beneficiary of a rigged political and financial system. Comey's statement had played directly into the hands of the Sanders insurgents. It left the distinct impression that laws are for the little people. They simply don't apply to Hillary Clinton because, well, she's Hillary Clinton. Which points to Obama's third and final job at Charlotte, humanizing the Queen. "I saw how she treated everybody with respect, even the folks who aren't, quote, unquote, important." Obama testified he enlarged Clinton's humility before the crowd because it was invisible to the naked eye. With his jacket and tie off, the cuffs of his sleeves turned, and a winning smile spread from ear to ear, Obama came to loan Hillary Clinton his common touch. Passing the baton to her was a team effort, however. It demanded hard work from countless enablers. These included not just Democrats, but also many Republicans who shared the conviction that Trump represented an extraordinary threat to our democracy. Desperate times call for desperate measures. To block Trump, Clinton's supporters bent rules and broke laws. They went to surprising lengths to strengthen her while framing him, both in the sense of depicting him in a particular light and of planting evidence against him. When it comes to ongoing FBI criminal investigations, presidents typically refrain from describing their preferred outcomes. They feared the appearance of exerting undue influence over Lady Justice. But in the case of Hillary Clinton's email abuses, Obama made an exception. She would never intentionally put America in any kind of jeopardy, he remarked in a TV interview in April 2016. She has displayed a carelessness in terms of managing emails, he allowed, but I also think it's important to keep this in perspective. Well-intentioned but careless, said the commander-in-chief. 3 months later, the FBI finished its investigation and James Comey arrived at an identical conclusion. Although we did not find clear evidence that Secretary Clinton or her colleagues intended to violate laws governing the handling of classified information, he said in his July 5th statement, there is evidence that they were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information. Well-intentioned, but careless. Comey was locked at a Vulcan mind meld with his boss. As a political move, highlighting Clinton's intentions was astute. It had a common-sense feel. Americans instinctively take intentions into account when determining guilt. As a strict matter of law, however, it was vapid. The mishandling of classified information falls into the category of a non-intent crime. It's a type of objective recklessness, like running over a pedestrian while blowing through a red light. Violations of this sort trigger criminal liabilities regardless of the offender's state of mind. But let's assume that some clever lawyer in the Department of Justice discovered a very learned and superficially compelling rationale for applying Obama's fictive standard of intent. Even so, Hillary Clinton couldn't clear the hurdle. The sheer volume of classified material the FBI recovered from her server constituted proof of intent. 52 email chains contained classified information, Comey said. Particularly damning was the form this material took. It is impossible to paste a classified document into an unclassified email accidentally because the 3 computer systems, unclassified, confidential/secret, and top secret, are physically separate networks, each feeding into an independent hard drive on the user's desk. If a classified document appears in an unclassified email, then someone downloaded it onto a thumb drive and manually uploaded it to the unclassified network, an intentional act if there ever was one. One of Clinton's emails suggests that downloading and uploading material in this fashion was a commonplace activity in her office. In June 2011, a staffer encountered difficulty transmitting a document to her by means of a classified system. An impatient Clinton instructed him to strip the classified markings from the document and send it on as an unclassified email. Turn into non-paper with no identifying heading and send non-secure, Clinton instructed. On 3 separate occasions, staffers got sloppy and failed to strip the non-papers of all markings that betrayed their classified origins. The FBI recovered one email, for example, that contained a C in parentheses in the margin, an obvious sign that the corresponding paragraph was classified confidential. When an agent personally interviewed Clinton on July 2nd, he showed her the document and asked whether she understood what the C meant. For anyone who has ever held a security clearance, C's in the margins are more ubiquitous than C's on water faucets and no more baffling. But Clinton played the ditzy grandmother. She had simply assumed, she said, that the C was marking an item in an alphabetized list. In the 2,500-year life of the alphabet, this was a first, a list that started with the 3rd letter and contained but a single item. The explanation was laughable, but any sensible answer would have constituted an acknowledgement of malicious intent. Her only out was the well-intentioned but careless script that Obama had written for her. In other words, she lied to the FBI, a felony offense. Before she ever told this howler, however, Comey had already prepared a draft of his statement exonerating her. The FBI let Hillary Clinton skate. But give Comey his due. If he had followed the letter of the law, the trail of guilt may have led all the way to Obama himself. As Andrew C. McCarthy has demonstrated at National Review Online, Obama used a dummy email account to communicate with Clinton via her private server. Did this make Obama complicit in Clinton's malfeasance? Anyone in Comey's position would have thought twice before moving to prosecute her, and not only because the case might have ensnared the president himself. The FBI must enforce the law, but it must also be seen to be enforcing it. As a rule, these 2 imperatives buttress each other. During the 2016 election, Comey faced extraordinary circumstances. If he had followed the law to the letter, he would have toppled the leading candidate for president and decapitated the Democratic Party. Clinton's supporters, more than 50% of the electorate, would have erupted in outrage, screaming that a politicized FBI had thrown the election to Donald Trump. Guarding the Bureau's reputation for impartiality is a serious concern, but it is nevertheless a thoroughly political concern. Comey would have us believe that it was a unique moment in his career, the singular entry into the political arena of an otherwise apolitical servant of the law. Truth be told, Comey loves being in the thick of it, but not because he is a partisan brawler. He is not. It is the drama that he relishes, the grand stage. His favorite role is that of Joe Friday, the no-nonsense lawman, the guardian of legal processes before the encroachments of dirty politicians. Joe Friday, however, was a simple detective, a confirmed bachelor, content to live quietly with his mother and his parakeet. And of course, he was a TV fiction. In real life, humble straight shooters get clobbered with a brick before they ever reach the limelight. In real life, snagging the big part often requires the equivalent of leaving a bloody horse head in the producer's bed. And it requires a supportive staff. Mid-year exam, the code name for the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails, relied on a team of men and women with the right stuff, a quality that is hard to define but easy to recognize. The right stuff did not require strong Democratic credentials, but they certainly helped. Andrew Mccabe, the deputy director of the FBI, led the team. Mccabe was not your FBI gumshoe of old. He spent no time in his younger days chasing bank robbers in Des Moines. He was part of a new breed, the post-9/11 FBI leadership, for whom the career fast track was counterterrorism. He came of age at the intersection of law enforcement with national security, shuttling between D.C. and New York. Along the way, he developed a valuable personal network. His wife Jill ran as Democrat for a Virginia state Senate seat in 2015. The political organization of Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, one of Hillary Clinton's very closest associates, gave her nearly $500,000. Perhaps more important than having Democratic credentials was having a heightened understanding of the needs of senior leadership. In the FBI, certainly, but not also in the DOJ. Right across the street from the J. Edgar Hoover building sat Attorney General Loretta Lynch. She would be scrutinizing mid-year exam in every detail, and not just Lynch. Hillary Clinton herself would be watching closely, and would be brought in for questioning too. Being willing and able to treat her with kid gloves was essential. She might be our next president, team member Lisa Page reminded Peter Strzok, the agent in charge of mid-year exam. Referring to Clinton's upcoming FBI interview, Page wrote, "The last thing you need us going in there loaded for bear." Like Mccabe, Strzok had pursued a career at the nexus of law enforcement and counterterrorism, but he was less overtly political. A John Kasich sympathizer, he was by nature a middle-of-the-roader, and a Republican-leaning one at that. Clinton left him cold, but Trump left him even colder, and his active personal life helped concentrate his mind on that antipathy. Strzok was having an affair with Page, who was an FBI lawyer on McCabe's staff. Both were married. Page's politics were typical of highly educated people in D.C. She detested Trump and his supporters. "He is a loathsome human being," she texted to Strzok, who readily agreed. After Trump captured the nomination, hostility to him quickly became part of their private idiom. If the ultimate aphrodisiac, as Henry Kissinger famously claimed, is power, then wielding it together with an illicit lover must be the pinnacle of eroticism. Together, Strzok and Page explored the power of secrets, routinely leaking to the press to shape political outcomes. Still on the phone with Devlin, Page texted to Strzok, referring to former Wall Street Journal national security reporter Devlin Barrett. Big news about the Hillary Clinton email story was breaking when Devlin and Page were on the phone together. "You might want to tell Devlin he should turn on CNN. There's news on," Strzok texted back. Page, "He knows. He just got handed a note." Strzok, "Huh. Asking about it now." Page, "Yeah, it was pretty funny." Influencing the nation's politics was routine and ridiculously easy. One quick call to Devlin and boom, the world changed. Deploying secrets for political effect, deciding which to keep, which to tell, and how to tell them was a task that they approached with alacrity. The ultimate goal, of course, was not propping up Hillary Clinton so much as maximizing the power and autonomy of the FBI. In pursuing this goal, McCabe and the two lovers demonstrated the very essence of the right stuff, a breezy comfort with bending the law to the demands of politics. They honed their skills on mid-year exam, and as that test ended, an even bigger one loomed before them. At the end of July, Comey and McCabe would officially open an investigation into Russian meddling in the election, including possible coordination between Russia and the Trump campaign. On July 5th, the day of Comey's press conference on Clinton's emails, a former British spy, Christopher Steele, flew to Rome to meet an old FBI contact. The information he brought had weighty implications for the impending investigation, but neither the information nor the implications are what we have been led to believe. Steele, a former British spy and Russian expert, was working on contract to Fusion GPS, a Washington-based public relations firm, which in turn was on contract to a D.C. law firm, which in turn was on contract to the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC. Steele, that is to say, was working for Hillary Clinton. His job, among other things, was to collect opposition research on Trump from his network of Russian sources. When Steele arrived in Rome, his famous dossier did not exist. The dossier, as we have come to know it, is some 17 reports that he compiled between June and December 2016. In early July, Steele had been working on the Clinton account for only a few weeks and had written but one report dated June 20th. It claimed that Trump was Vladimir Putin's Manchurian candidate. The Russian regime has been cultivating, supporting, and assisting Trump for at least 5 years, Steele reported. Putin's goal was to sow discord and disunity, both within the U.S. itself, but more especially within the transatlantic alliance. The Russian leader supported Trump mainly by supplying valuable intelligence on his opponents, including Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. Putin had offered lucrative financial contracts, but Trump had turned them down. The wily Russian, however, had managed to get his hooks into Trump due to American sexual perversion. During a visit to Moscow in 2013, Trump had hired prostitutes to stay with him in the same hotel suite used by the Obamas on one of their trips. The FSB, Russia's secret police, had fitted the room with cameras and recording equipment. Trump had the prostitutes defile Obama's bed by putting on a golden shower performance for him. All of it was caught on tape. Earth-shaking news. Vladimir Putin was blackmailing Donald J. Trump. No doubt, Steele's FBI handler rushed this report to his superiors in Washington, D.C. They, in turn, raced it straight to Obama's desk. Sorry, wrong. According to the New York Times, Steele's explosive revelations wound their way to the J. Edgar Hoover building only slowly. It took weeks before they appeared in Strzok's inbox. Why? Mike Morell, the former deputy director of the CIA, helps explain the delay. Morell did some digging into Christopher Steele's dossier and shared the results of his research at a public forum in Washington, D.C. in March 2017. Steele, according to Morell, did not have direct access to the Russians whom he labeled as his sources, people who included former officers in the FSB. He communicated with them, if that is the right word, through paid intermediaries who paid the so-called sources. The chances of Steele having been played were thus great. Morell explained it like this. If you're paying somebody, particularly former FSB officers, they are going to tell you truth and innuendo and rumor, and they're going to call you up and say, hey, let's have another meeting. I have more information for you, because they want to get paid some more. This process, Morell says, takes you nowhere. Steele's report was, in a word, junk, and Morell, the man who expressed that opinion, was not just a seasoned intelligence professional, he was also a staunch supporter of Hillary Clinton for president. Nor did Steele's FBI handler in Rome set off an alarm in Washington, because he, presumably, was also a seasoned professional who knew junk when he saw it, and he had many additional reasons to doubt the veracity of Steele's reporting, reasons that Morell refrained from broaching. How, for example, could Steele be sure that the former SFB officers in his network were fully retired? The convoluted pipeline between Moscow and London gave Russian intelligence too many opportunities to inject disinformation into the flow of reports to London. And let's not neglect the glaring issue of plausibility. When in the history of the rivalry between the West and Russia has it been possible for a British spy to call up sources in Moscow and gain immediate access to the deepest secrets of the Kremlin? Steele, relying only on his wits, unearthed gems, the likes of which glittered only in the dreams of the CIA, Mossad, and MI6, the greatest intelligence-gathering organizations on Earth. To believe that tale, we must assume that Steele, like James Bond, is no ordinary secret agent. He's a super spy. Then there's a little matter of Steele's personal bias. According to one well-informed associate, Steele was passionate about preventing Trump from winning the election. His financial incentives, of course, oriented him in exactly the same direction. He was a paid piper, and he got paid only for collecting information detrimental to Trump. Isn't it possible, likely even, that his shadowy paymasters in the demi-monde of the Clinton campaign were calling the tune? Steele's reports certainly harmonized beautifully with the campaign's propaganda. On June 2nd, in a speech in San Diego, Hillary Clinton unveiled her main line of attack on Donald Trump's foreign policy. His ideas, she said, were dangerously incoherent. In fact, they weren't even really ideas, just a series of bizarre rants, personal feuds, and outright lies. Particularly mystifying was his attitude towards the Russian dictator. He said if he were grading Vladimir Putin as a leader, he'd give him an A. I'll leave it to the psychiatrist to explain his affection for tyrants. But the demi-monde wasn't about to leave it to mental health professionals. It hired instead a British super spy. He immediately explained that Putin was extorting Trump. 2 weeks after that, he flew to Rome to share his explanation with the FBI. By the time he left Rome, his handler might not have guessed that the Clinton campaign was funding the spy's work. The political nature of Steele's mission, however, would have been obvious. In Rome on July 5th, the FBI was beginning to acquire a new secret, but it was not the one contained in Steele's report. The Clinton campaign, the FBI would soon learn with certainty, was intent on framing Trump as Putin's puppet. That secret was truly explosive and perhaps thrilling for the two lovers on Mccabe's staff. In time, all of them, Strzok, Page, Mccabe, and Comey, would all mishandle it, damaging their careers irreparably. In July, however, they were not yet in a rush to ruination. The team with the right stuff cautiously watched and waited. Not until September would they take their fateful missteps. On July 22nd, WikiLeaks released the largest cache of DNC emails. The plan behind the hack now became clear: to sabotage the Democratic National Convention, which opened in Philadelphia on July 25th. While Clinton was organizing a celebration of Democratic unity, Guccifer 2.0 was working to flood the convention floor with enraged Bernie Sanders insurgents. In the event, Clinton managed to prevent the protests from ruining the convention, but they did damage her theater of power, and they also handed Trump a fresh opportunity to broadcast his crooked Hillary theme. He took obvious delight in the rage of the Sanders followers. An analysis showed that Bernie Sanders would have won the Democratic nomination if it were not for the superdelegates, Trump tweeted on the eve of the convention. The statement hit Clinton like an iron bar to her kneecap. The thought that a malevolent foreign actor was helping Trump deliver the blow only increased the pain. Most observers assumed that the Russian state-backed hackers stood behind Guccifer 2.0, an assumption that has grown stronger with time. If Trump felt sheepish about benefiting from such people, he hid it well. I will tell you this, Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing, he said on July 27th, referring to Hillary Clinton's messages that the FBI never recovered during its investigation of her private server. In the eyes of his supporters, Trump's appeal to Putin was a stage whisper, a mock gesture, and a pointed dig at Clinton. In her rush to hide emails from the FBI, Trump implied she had delivered them up to Putin on a platter, but his brand of humor was lost on Clinton and her team. To them, the appeal to Putin was sinister. I just think that's beyond the pale, said Clinton loyalist and former CIA director Leon Panetta. To shame Trump before the voters, the campaign shifted its rhetoric perceptibly. In June, Clinton had depicted Trump's attitude towards Putin as irrational. Now the two were said to be in a partnership. A bromance was how John Podesta, Clinton campaign's chairman, described it. This has to be the first time that a major presidential candidate has actively encouraged a foreign power to conduct espionage against his political opponent, said senior Clinton policy aide Jake Sullivan. This has gone from being a matter of curiosity and a matter of politics to being a national security issue. Shaming was all well and good, but it only resonated among committed voters. Winning the election required convincing independents that Trump was more than just a passive beneficiary of the DNC hack. He had to be an accomplice. Clinton's campaign thus posted 5 questions on its website. What's behind Trump's fascination with Vladimir Putin? Why does Trump surround himself with advisors with links to the Kremlin? Why do Trump's foreign policy ideas read like a Putin wish list? Do Trump's still secret tax returns show ties to Russian oligarchs? Why is Trump encouraging Russia to interfere in our election? Each question was followed by a short answer, leading to the inevitable conclusion that Trump was actively conspiring with Putin. And so, the collusion thesis was born. The website did not spell out the details of the conspiracy, but the campaign's demimond left nothing to the imagination. Christopher Steele had discovered Russian sources, who painted a vivid picture of the plot. Putin had decided against releasing the compromising videos of Trump. The Manchurian candidate was proving just too beneficial to Russia. In fact, a full-blown alliance had formed between Putin and Trump, based on their mutual interest in defeating Hillary Clinton. They struck a grand bargain. Putin would help elect Trump, who would deliver a supine American policy on Ukraine and NATO defense. The super spies network was remarkable. His Russian sources were as close to Trump as they were to Putin. An ethnic Russian close associate of Trump's admitted that there was a well-developed conspiracy between him and the Russians. Another source revealed more. The DNC hack was carried out with the full knowledge and support of Trump and senior members of his campaign team. There it was, the proof the Clinton campaign needed. The great crime against Hillary Clinton was a joint Russian-American operation, and Trump was in on it from the beginning. Steele's startling discoveries hardly stopped there. But before revealing more, let's pause and consider the purpose of his reports. How precisely did his direct employer, Fusion GPS, use them? To hear Glenn Simpson tell it, his company, Fusion GPS, is a research organization. What we do is provide people with factual information, he told the Senate Judiciary Committee in August 2017. Our specialty is public record information. In truth, Simpson's true specialty is not research but persuasion. More specifically, persuasion of reporters. He has a talent for convincing journalists to publish stories, true or not, that benefit his clients. In short, he is a public relations flack. But Simpson is no ordinary PR man. He's a super flack. In the first decade of this century, he was in his early 40s and working as an investigative journalist for the Wall Street Journal. He was reaching the pinnacle of his profession just as the internet was gutting the print media. Simpson, however, had a marketable talent. I call it journalism for rent, he said at a public forum in August 2017. Journalism, as we once knew, might be dead, but deep-pocketed clients still needed to get stories into the press, and they needed to block other stories from being published. Simpson knew almost every member of the Washington Press Corps personally, and he understood the constraints under which they worked, what it took to get a story past an editor. He handed them canned articles. They got scoops. He got happy clients. When pitching stories on Trump-Putin collusion, Simpson eventually discovered the great benefit of placing Christopher Steele directly in front of reporters. In September and October, he would fly the spy from London to the United States so the two of them could brief major media outlets as a team. Before that, in July and August, Simpson did not have the benefit of Steele's physical presence, but neither was he alone. He still had the super spies report, James Bond in a briefcase. Con men stoked the greed of their marks by letting them catch glimpses of suitcase bulging with cash. Simpson gave his marks a sense that he was similarly loaded, but with valuable information, not money. In September 2016, Steele and I met in Washington and discussed the information now known as the dossier, wrote Jonathan Weiner in the Washington Post. A former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, Weiner admitted passing Steele's information to his superiors. I was allowed to review, but not to keep a copy of these reports to enable me to alert the State Department, he explained. Simpson, we infer, would let journalists catch a glimpse of the super spy's raw intelligence. Then he would quickly take the document back, because you understand, it was just too sensitive to leave lying around. If journalists feared that Steele's startling reports, such as, for example, the one about the Golden Shower, contained Russian disinformation, Simpson had a well-rehearsed spiel at the ready to reassure them. He inadvertently shared it before the House Intelligence Committee in November 2017. Steele, Simpson explained, had a standard presentation for journalists to explain how he avoided falling prey to the diabolical Russians. Sliding into the first person, he rattled off Steele's lines. I was the lead Russianist at MI6 in the final years of my career, and I was previously stationed in Moscow, and I speak Russian, and I've done Russian intelligence, counterintelligence issues all of my life. And the central problem when you're a Russian intelligence expert is disinformation, and that the Russians have a long history and an advanced capability in disinformation. And so, before we go any further, I just want you to know that this is the fundamental problem with my profession. And it should be assumed that in any sort of intelligence gathering, there will be some disinformation, and I'm trained to spot that and filter it out. But you should understand that no one's perfect. Simpson then switched to the first-person plural. Perhaps when briefing journalists, this was the point at which he would speak in his own voice as the leader of the talented and experienced team at Fusion GPS. And so we've essentially filtered out everything that we think is disinformation, and we're not going to present you that to you here. We're going to present to you things that we think come from credible sources, but we're not going to warrant to you that this is all true. Simpson staked the credibility of the dossier on just one thing: Steele's super awesomeness. On his own, Simpson would have been flacking salacious rumor, but paired with Steele, he was briefing credible intelligence. Together, they became a super duo. The purpose of the dossier would change over time. In July and August, the goal was not to get Steele's reports directly into the press. Nobody knew better than Simpson, a highly experienced reporter, that Steele's claims were unverifiable and therefore unprintable. The best he could achieve was an article that reinforced the main suppositions of the collusion thesis. An article such as Trump and Putin, a love story, which David Remnick, the editor of The New Yorker, wrote and published in early August. Putin sees in Trump a grand opportunity, Remnick explained. He sees in Trump weakness and ignorance, a confused mind. He has every hope of exploiting him. Remnick stopped just short of claiming that Putin was actually blackmailing Trump, but his depiction of their relations matched, in general, the story that emerged from Steele's reports. Remnick took pains, for example, to instruct the readers. The gathering of compromising material is a familiar tactic in Putin's arsenal. For years, the Russian intelligence services have filmed political enemies in stages of sexual and/or narcotic indulgence and have distributed the grainy images online. Did Remnick personally rely on a Fusion GPS briefing? We do not know. Jane Mayer, a staff writer for The New Yorker, recently confessed that she received a briefing in September directly from super spy himself, so the potential for communication certainly existed. Regardless of what inspired Remnick, his approach represented a win for Simpson. If, with the help of the dossier or any other tool of persuasion, he could convince journalists that Putin was blackmailing Trump with compromising videos, then it was just that much easier to convince them to report stories about, say, the danger to the Western alliance that Trump represented, a story that would require nothing more than stringing together a few quotes from Trump with a few ominous warnings from foreign policy experts. The dossier, in short, helped Simpson sell a master narrative.